Use 2, not any other configuration.
Come on.
3's okay.
Okay, Mr. Chair, ready to go.
Thank you very much, Peter. Welcome everyone to our Environment and Sustainability Committee meeting for Tuesday, April 28th. What we probably should do first is to do a roll call before I actually call the meeting to order. So I'll ask if so Councillor Bernard is not online, I take it?
Councillor Bernard's not here at this time.
Okay, Councillor Greg Rivard.
I am here, Terry. I do have to leave at 1 for another conference call, so I just wanted to let you.
Okay.
That way we maintain quorum.
Okay, cool. I think we're in pretty good shape here. Councillor Julie McCabe.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Philip Brown is here. CAO Peter Kelly.
Here.
Ramona Doyle.
Here.
And do we have Cindy taking the minutes today?
We do.
Okay, good to see Cindy here. And also online, I believe, is Jessica Corkin-Gorell.
Yeah, here.
Yeah, and Katrina Crystal.
Yes, here.
And am I missing anybody?
Looks like you have all the numbers.
I think I got all the names. Good enough. Well, thanks everybody else for logging in, and we'll call the meeting to order. Is there any declarations of conflict of interest?
None.
Seeing none. Approval of the agenda.
Yeah.
Moved by Councillor Rivard, seconded by
Me.
okay, Mayor Philip Brown. The minutes of February 25th. Can I have an approval for that, and then we'll talk about business?
Yep.
Moved by Julie McCabe,
Yeah, I'll second.
seconded by Greg Rivard. Thank you very much. Any discussion on the minutes?
Councillor McLeod,
Yes, sir.
can I just go under 6E?
Right.
I think it's 6E.
That's
Wildflowers.
right.
Just trying to get a follow-up on that, Ramona. What are we looking at?
Right, so from our last discussion, the action items I had were to forward that on to Public Works and Parks and Recreation, and include Jessica in the discussions, and then look at opportunities along the bypass, and then reply to DJ and ask her about potential volunteers for the watering. So those, I did follow up with DJ and just let her know that we were having discussion with their other committee levels. I mean, I think kind of in all fairness right now, I don't know if they're looking at a whole lot of new initiatives. But I mean, it's something that they can consider. They talked about issues with the sight lines, like wanting to make sure that we're not getting like any materials that would be impacting like traffic issues. So
yeah,
that's kind of the response. There wasn't a whole lot of response, to be honest.
And Councillor McLeod, both you and I are on Public Works, so
Yeah, that's the other. I was
up on that too.
And I think our this committee did give it its best. We think it's a great idea, and I think we again just have to pursue it. It kind of got slowed down because of COVID, but I think once things start to ease up a bit, I think that's something we seriously got to look at for sure.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other business? I see none. Okay, let's move into reports. Transit update, I guess, is first, Ramona, and you can take it away.
Sure. So I just wanted to give a brief sort of verbal update in terms of a few different things. So operations wise, I know the mayor has been sitting in on our EMO meetings every morning, so has a bit of information there. But just so everyone here is aware, we're at about sort of 15 to 20% of our normal ridership on transit. We have posted that you can only use it for essential needs. So it's supposed to be for people who are getting their groceries, need to get to work. And so we have seen that people are complying with that. We have put some measures in place. There's more cleaning happening. There's more, there's always the hand sanitizer on there. And we also have like a plastic barrier between the driver and the passenger. So just kind of wanted to give that brief on the operation side. Is there any questions on that? Okay. Then on the ISIP funding application, so we did hear back from the the infrastructure secretariat, so they did increase the amount that we had applied for the minibuses. So we've moved ahead with awarding that to Crestline. We did the tender process last fall, so that was all complete. So, and in March we actually awarded that, but then the other two municipalities had to also pass their resolution. So that's complete now, and we'll be moving ahead with Crestline. Both are new flyer buses. Those are the full-size buses and the mini buses. Delivery date is still to be determined. So New Flyer shut down their manufacturing completely for a period of about 3 weeks, just to kind of gather themselves and figure out how they were going to move forward. So I'll keep everybody posted, but initially we had hoped to have our first shipment of vehicles, the first 3 of the full-size buses, to be here in the fall. That may or might not be happening, but I haven't gotten final word that won't be. So just wanted to make you aware of that. And then we are working on the application now, which would be for the final phase of the fleet enhancement. So that would be beginning in 2022 for the next 6 years. And that would be looking at the electric vehicles. It would be looking at facility upgrades, improvements to the transit terminals. But that will come back to committee before it is submitted, and it will go back to the CATCC as well. So that'll come forward as a recommendation to this committee after we've approved it at the CATCC level. But just let me know if there's any concerns or questions about that also.
Ramona, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ramona, on the purchase of the electric buses, Tony Redden from Bonshaw and Jason Howard, I believe, is the Green MLA from Summerside area. They're promoting the Lyon electric bus from Saint-Jérôme, Quebec. Anyways, I did get a contact from Jason that they had one of them up in Campbellton, New Brunswick. So I phoned the mayor in Campbellton, and she said, "Don't think we have anything up here." She did check with her transportation contacts, both in the school and in the transportation hub in around Campbellton, and they do have 2 down in Moncton, nothing in Campbellton. So I did speak to the manager for transportation in Moncton, where they're using it. That Lyon bus, they're having lots of difficulty with the chargers, and they bought 2, but of the 2 they really only have 1 running all the time. So I've been trying to get back to Jason Howard and Tony Redden, provide this information. I know Councillor McLeod, Mr. Chair, Mike Cassidy has already told us that Lyon has to get some work done on their. The chassis is great because it's fiberglass, but it's the mechanical and the powertrain where they're having the problems. So.
Just to kind of give you a little tidbit of information here too, I think Ramona and I have talked in the past about there was an open visitation given to us in Winnipeg, right? To go see that operation, especially at the cold weather that they have, and it's something I think would be very worthwhile for me to go to, and Ramona, and just that way you can, or anyone else in the committee that wants to go.
Good idea.
It's just to really get it from the ground level as to what's going on with the buses, because there's lots of hype. We can do this and do that, but now that it's been in operation for quite a while there, I think it'd be a great idea for us to go see it. I don't know if Ramona's still on board, but I think it'd be a great idea.
So the reason I bring that up, Mr. Chair, is that there is this promotion going on for the Lyon electric bus.
I do know
there are a lot of issues there, so when they get them ironed out, it'll be a great fix.
Yeah.
Or a great fit for the city of Charlottetown. But at this point in time, I think we had the time to look at the options that are out there. And
exactly.
Ramona and Mr. Cassidy have been looking, keeping a close eye on what we want. Thank you.
Very much. Any other questions for Ramona, guys?
Nope.
Go ahead.
Okay, and then just the final thing is the mayor's office did receive a letter from the mayor of Montreal regarding CUTA is the Canadian Urban Transit Association. They're kind of like the FCM of transit in Canada. So they are working on a lobby effort of the federal government to get support for transit systems who have lost revenue due to COVID. So essentially, my understanding from the letter is that they're looking for a sign of support from the city of Charlottetown. Will we join in and also submit a letter to CUTA? And will we be willing to kind of lobby as sort of a united front on support for transit systems? We're not in the same situation as a place like Toronto or Montreal. I think they quoted losing 18 to 20 million a week. Like, it's just crazy. But certainly there'll be losses here. And some of that money would likely go to the operator, but there's also a chance that we would get some support for our municipal subsidy and offsetting some of that cost, because we've continued to offer that in a time with such uncertain use.
Yeah. And Ramona, TCC laid off 120 drivers, transit drivers, and they're losing about $20 million a week.
Yeah. So I did speak to Mike about this. So there's been no layoffs in the system here. There were 2 individuals that requested leave from work during that time because they had someone at home that was immunocompromised and didn't want to, and were worried about risk. But they've got everybody back on now, and they haven't had to do any layoffs yet, and hopefully that'll continue. But certainly when you're looking at a reduction of about 75% in ridership, you are looking at that reduction in the fare box. So they are experiencing losses.
If I may, I know I did say it publicly at our last council meeting, but again, T3 is doing a wonderful job, guys, and we're very fortunate to be in the position we are. So just hats off to Mike and his operation there. They're doing a great job.
So are we going ahead with a letter of support?
I think we should. I think from my point of view,
the support of council.
I guess probably.
And so it should be going to council for a letter of support, Your Worship. So if they would move by motion to do so, that can be added to the agenda.
I will move that we move this forward to council for approval.
Moved by Julie, seconded by
Myself.
Greg, Councillor Greg Rivert. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? None. So
just to
we'll
clarify,
move that on to council. Thank you very much.
if I could, Mr. Chair, also Councillor Bernard is now in the meeting, so if they would put that in the official record, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Cindy, you can add that.
I've been in the meeting all along, Peter.
Okay, so we showed you off screen here, Council. That's why that we ensure you were here.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's fine.
Hello, Councillor.
Hello.
So moving on to 6B, Frank McCauley Park project update. I think that's a verbal going to be given by Ramona, I believe.
Yeah, sorry, I'll let Jessica handle that. She was going to give the update.
Okay, sorry. Okay, sorry.
Sure. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jessica.
So just to give a quick background, so this is a project that Beth has started with funding from the Arbor Day Foundation and TDFEF. And due to weather, the swale was not able to be completed, so the project's been on hold. And so we recently got the permit extended until fall of 2020. And Matheson's Construction is the company that won the award. So they are good to go. They're just waiting for the site to be accessible. And the other part of the funding was a community event. So I think, given the current situation, we will be unable to deliver the community event in June as we planned. So I've written to the funders and asked if they could extend our deadline for the community event until the fall for now. And I have yet to hear back from them on that. So hopefully Matheson's will be on the site next week if we don't get too much rain and the site's dry enough. And then we can look at potentially a fall event to do planting with the community and have a little celebration.
Thank you very much. Just a note, due to the fact I live nearby, I walk around there a lot, and the work that was done last fall was tremendous, and it worked really well. So hats off to both our Parks and Rec and Public Works Division, plus the province's Environment Department. There's a family of ducks living in it right now, where we had kind of made a makeshift pond, so it goes to show that if we do a bit of work, there's lots of potential there. But the red clay is not there; it's not run, So it's really good to see that work that was done prior to the winter really paid off. So just a hats off to all those folks. Any other questions, folks, on that one?
So just to clarify, Mr. Chair, the celebration will be in the fall. Is that what
Yes.
the Wild Child group too? Were they to be part of it?
I believe so. Yes.
In 2019, they had agreed to be a part of it. I've yet to get confirmation from them again, but I've reached out to them a couple of times, so I'll keep poking to see if they'll be part of it this year. And the local watershed group, Ramona, can you remind me what the name of that group is?
Yeah, the Ellens Creek Watershed Group, they'll want to be involved also.
They want to be involved in it as well. So they've agreed to bring forward maybe something hands-on educational around water quality or something like that. So they're involved, and we'll do some tree planting. I had also looked at bringing in some, like a bird of prey kind of falcon show into the park, where they can get the kids learning about local wildlife and birds. So we had kind of a little itinerary scheduled, but I mean, I'm hopeful that we can do something in the fall, but I guess that's still a question as well, right? Whether we'll be able to have public events in September.
Yeah. The reason I mentioned Wild Child, Hannah was on last night on CBC Compass.
Yeah.
They're trying to do something with their program this summer. She's doubtful, but it may happen, and that's why I was asking if they would be part of the fall celebration.
Yeah, I'll definitely connect with her for sure.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Any other questions? I see none. Thank you very much for the report, Jessica. Tree protection bylaw amendments. I believe that's you again, Jessica.
That's me as well. So the bylaw, as you know, was passed in May of 2019. So we've been running with it for a full year now. And there were just a few things that have popped up over the last little while that I thought it was worthy of just clarifying in the bylaw. And so I've highlighted those areas in your packages, so you could probably just follow along if you're interested. But one of the areas was around what the bylaw kind of relates to, as it in the bylaw says it is related to all city-owned lands. So while that's not really the case, because the city owns lands outside of our jurisdiction, as example, well fields. So we can't dictate tree protection of our well field areas that are outside of the city of Charlottetown. So a lot of the clarification is around that the bylaw relates to city trees in the city of Charlottetown. So not specifically city-owned lands. And then the second part was around tree protection zones. So in the original bylaw, we had an appendix with what we wanted signage on fencing to look like, and it wasn't specific to Charlottetown. So it gave examples for Town of Oakville and other municipalities. So we've created a City of Charlottetown sign that people can borrow and attach to their fencing. And so now that updated sign and information is in the bylaw. And then the third thing was around emergency pruning. So we've met with Maritime Electric and utility companies a few times regarding the bylaw. And to them, it wasn't clear that in an emergency, when they can't reach out to us in advance, they should be allowed to prune a tree in order to restore power to houses, because the way it was worded, they felt that they were in contravention of the bylaw when they were doing emergency work. So one of the lines is just clarifying that an emergency does include pruning a tree to restore power to a building. So just very quickly then, so page 6 had 4 amendments where we specified that the bylaw relates to only City of Charlottetown. page 10 notes, there was just a minor typo I fixed on page 10. And also, we also indicated that private residents would be notified in advance of any work on their property, but that can't be the case in an emergency. So I noted that. Page 11 speaks to the signs that I mentioned, the tree protection zone signs.
Jessica,
Yes.
give me an example of what work we would be doing with trees on private property that would have to give notice to the owner.
So in the bylaw, we state that in order to manage pests or monitor for pests, we have the right to go onto private property, or if we want to protect heritage trees, so 100 centimeters and more of our 5 kind of special species, elms and maples and oaks. And also in an emergency situation, so say a private tree was hazardous and was leaning over a sidewalk or falling on a wire or over a road, we might need to have a situation where we go on private property to make a site safe.
Okay. But someone on private property that owns a tree can cut the tree down without having to tell the city it's on their property.
The only way they can't currently is if that is a heritage tree.
Right.
So
Right.
we are protecting large specimen trees on private property that are elm, oak, maple, linden.
Is there many heritage trees? Is there many designated heritage trees that are on private property that we have designated?
There are quite a few. I don't have the number in front of me, but I can definitely get you that if you were interested. We have an inventory of all our elm trees, private and public. We have an inventory of ash trees now because we're monitoring for the emerald ash borer. And we have an inventory of our heritage trees of other species as well.
Okay, so is it your department that's going door to door offering people free trees?
We don't go door to door offering free trees. The only trees we plant with city budget is in city right-of-ways and city parks. So sometimes a person will get a city tree in front of their house, but that's generally meant to be in a city boulevard, city right-of-way. We don't give away free trees for private property.
Do we know what department is doing that?
I've not heard of that.
Would that be under beautification?
Well, apparently they're going door to door offering a free tree, and
Oh.
I'm
I wonder maybe if there's potential that maybe there was miscommunication. So I'll tell you what we did. So new this year, we had plans to put in all our new street trees and park trees starting in the next couple of weeks, which obviously isn't happening. But in advance of that, what used to happen is our staff used to go door to door and knock on doors and have a conversation with each resident to tell them they're getting a new tree near their house. And that took a long time and triggered a lot of different conversations. So this year, what we did is we made a door hanger that said the address, the type of tree, the planting time frame, and those door hangers went out to the people that lived beside the city trees we were planting, and a telephone number to call if they have questions. So but those are city trees on city right-of-ways.
No, I'm talking, well, unless you're talking the front, I'm talking the front yards of people's property. No.
So sometimes the city right-of-ways extend quite a ways into what looks like people's front lawns.
Right.
So it could be a misinterpretation. I'm not sure.
No, what happens is some get annoyed when somebody gets a free tree and they're not. So
yeah, I know. That's why I
Yeah.
want to make sure we don't generally give away free trees to residents, because that's a slippery slope.
So well, we did it last year for sure. So why won't we offer, if anybody wants a free tree, if they buy one, then we can match it with a free tree. Then they'll have two. Because I'm assuming you want to increase the canopy in different parts of the city.
Yeah, definitely. I think that would have to be a program we'd have to go through for some budget, because as far as I know right now, we don't have the budget allocated for a program to support private tree planting.
So
but I mean, there's nothing stopping people from requesting a tree in their neighborhood on city property near their house.
So where was the budget last year when we were planting the trees last year and going door to door asking if they wanted a tree or not?
I'm not aware that we did that. Sorry.
I think that's pre-Jessica. That was probably Beth.
Yeah, and I would just to weigh in there. I'm not aware of that program either. Like it again, I think maybe what Jessica is referring to, like, is saying that miscommunication, that this isn't a free tree that's being given to a resident to plant on their private property. It's a tree that's being planted in the right of way. But I'm not aware of a program where we were giving out free trees for people to plant on their property. Unless it was like a seedling giveaway at an event or something.
No, we weren't. We were planting them, and they weren't seedlings. They were anywhere from 5 to 8 feet tall.
Okay.
And they were being planted on private property?
Well, Jessica was saying it could be. It's on the house side of the ditch, so it still could be city right away though. Just looks like it's on their property. Yeah. But I mean, the knock on the door was there. Do you want a tree? The city was looking to plant a tree and increase canopy. And sure, yeah, go ahead. Put one up.
Yeah. My guess it's the city right away.
Okay. Yeah. I believe Councillor Rivard has a question.
I do. Thank you, Councillor McLeod. On the tree topic, just to follow up with Councillor Bernard's questions around the heritage trees. So if someone were to wanting to extend their deck or put a pool in the backyard or things of that nature, how difficult is it for them to delist, I guess, the tree from the heritage stock and be able to remove that?
So right now, the calls we're getting and requests for heritage trees, they're fairly infrequent. So when they come around, Morgan and I are able to deal with those within a matter of a few days. Now, this is a little bit trickier now because we're not out in the field, so we're trying to find workarounds for doing field work when we're working from home. So we've been doing some desktop analysis of trees, but we're still getting regular calls from people about trees, and we did some promo around the bylaw, so it's raised some questions from the public. But typically within a few days, if someone isn't sure whether they have a heritage tree or whether they need it assessed, usually we'll get out and can respond to that within a few days.
Well, thank you. Let's assume that someone does have a heritage tree in their back lawn and they need to remove that heritage tree because they want to put in a family pool or whatever. Let's assume they maybe bought the house not knowing that the heritage tree was back there. I mean, I'm assuming that the city wouldn't stop them from taking the tree down to put in a pool on their private property, would we?
Good question. I mean, I'm not sure where the bylaw for tree protection sits amongst other permitting, right? So I assume they'd be working with the city to get a permit to build a structure on their property, would they? Or for a pool?
Yeah.
Okay. Just another question. So in the event that someone loses a tree due to, for instance, Hurricane Dorian that just passed through just over a year ago, and lost a tree on their private property, pretty close to our property, let's say, right away. Is that something that we would ever entertain replacing because of the damage done through Hurricane Dorian?
I don't think we have the ability to look at tree loss on private property and then how we compensate that on our city property.
Okay.
But I think we need to do every effort we can to plant as much on city property as possible. How that factors out and balances out with tree loss, I don't know if we can say it's to replace any private tree loss.
I think, again, it would go back to having to have that budget and a program set up if we were looking to do initiatives that relate to private tree replacements or plantings. I think at this point we're feeling like there's significant tree planting required on city right-of-ways at this point that we kind of are focusing our efforts there. And sorry, Greg, just back to the heritage, we do get the planning permits when they come in. If they trigger a tree loss, we have been working with planning and Robert to identify where there might be like a heritage tree loss scenario. So we're kind of evaluating those on a case-by-case basis. And sometimes we're able to work with that homeowner to do adjustments to how their plan might shape up in order to retain the tree.
Okay. So just sorry, Councillor McLeod, I just have another follow-up question, then one last question. So on the lost trees, I mean, we talk about budgetary items, which I appreciate, but this is a little different from what Councillor Bernard was saying, which, was given trees to anybody. I'm talking about any trees that are lost on private property that's caused by unforeseen circumstances, such as disease, such as, Hurricane Dorian, things of that nature. I don't think the ask would be that much, because I don't think we lose a lot of trees to that effect, as opposed to just giving away trees. So I don't think it would be a huge budgetary item. I just think it'd be a good idea for us to basically replant something where something was lost, especially if it was due to unforeseen circumstances.
So are you still referring, Councillor, to private property?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a touchy one, because in my own experience, my neighbor's tree fell on my house, and basically my insurance, because it was a storm, even though the tree had a 45-degree angle, everyone, a 2-year-old could tell you where it was going to fall, but because it happened during a storm, my house insurance had to pay for it. It was kind of weird how that works. You would think I shouldn't have to pay for anything, but that's how that works. So the private housing or public property or private property, there is insurances for that stuff, and I don't know if the city really gets into that. It's a good. I don't know if Ramona, you want to add any more to that, but I think we stay away from private property. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, Greg. It is like that replacement tree program for Dorian versus like new trees. But yeah, we just get a lot of requests for work on private property, and it's sometimes easier to just say no across the board than it is to create sort of mixed expectations in terms of what we'll do on private property too, right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if so sorry, can I just add one more question, then I'll shut up.
Oh yeah. Go ahead. So this is for.
Okay, so trees in ditches that is on city property that is running into power lines and impeding any kind of flow in, for those who don't have their ditches infilled yet. Do they call the city, or do they call Maritime Electric to have that removed because it's in the power lines, but yet it's on private property? And again, it's a public work issue because it's basically stopping the flow of water and collecting debris and everything else. Who would I forward them to?
So if it's a city-owned tree on city-owned property, they would definitely come to us.
Right.
Okay.
And then we would work with Maritime Electric if work was needed around the power line.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
So, Councillor,
Thank you very much. Yes, Your Worship.
I was just going to suggest that we know the importance of trees as it affects climate change, or it betters our position with climate change. I think we need a fuller discussion on it, and
right.
Looking at, I was going to bring it up under new business, but we may have to look at reviewing some of our items in our budget just to accommodate about these concerning these issues. Mm-hmm. And my second point is, Jessica, when you're going over the bylaw, could you just go by the sections? I don't have the page numbers.
Okay, sure.
I'm on. I want to go to one section. I don't. What page did you stop at?
Okay, so we talked about section 2, speaking to in the city of Charlottetown and clarifying that.
Yes.
And section 4.
Yeah.
And then there was an amendment 7.2, speaking to emergencies. There was a typo in section 8H. And there was mention of the new signs available in section 10.1. And also information at the bottom of 10.1 about working in a tree protection zone.
Yeah.
And then section 24 speaks to what I was talking about, Maritime Electric in an emergency situation.
Yeah, so just on that one, that's the one I know over in Stratford, that when Maritime Electric went down Stratford Road, or Bunbury Road, they had to clear the trees for lines. They just, they V-shaped the trees, and really it looks terrible. So I understand what Maritime Electric is stating when in an emergency that they need to prune trees, but that pruning on Bunbury Road was not emergency. That was just to accommodate their lines.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to watch out. I know they have to keep their lines protected because of inclement and weather that it could cause a lot of damage. So my point is, emergency, yes, I understand that, but anything else they're doing, we have to keep a close eye on it.
Yeah, we had 2 quite lengthy meetings with Maritime Electric staff. One when Beth was here, her and I both attended, and one after she left. But there was a lot of good conversation, and I think we've established, a good understanding of when they need to reach out to us. We've already sent them invoices for tree replacements on 2 occasions, so we're getting funding from them to compensate for tree loss where they need to put in a power line and do damage to our trees. So, that's great news, I think, because that was happening before without any compensation to us. So that's good. And the lines of communication are much more open now. So they're calling on a regular basis asking, is this a city tree? What can I do to this tree?
Right.
And we did a pruning session to talk about, unfortunately, the V is often one of the better things you can do to direct the tree branches around the wire rather than just topping, which
Right.
oftentimes is what they do, and just do a whole level cut, which is actually one of the worst things you can do. So sometimes the V and directing the trees around the wire is good. But they're giving us now monthly reports on work that they are doing on city trees, which is, again, a new thing, which is great as well.
Will that continue, the monthly report?
Yeah, this is just new, so we were trying to find a way where we could follow up. So in an emergency situation, the power goes out, Maritime Electric's out there pruning our trees. We don't know where, when, and what they're doing. So now we put together a new process where at the end of every month, they'll spit us out a report that says, these are the city streets where we worked in emergency. So then our staff can go out and look to see if there's damage that was done, if there's better pruning cuts that need to be done by our contractors or staff. So so that's going to be ongoing now, starting now, going into the future.
Okay, so maybe, I'm not saying you have to give us a detailed report, but maybe things of interest that you could bring that forward from Maritime Electric, yeah.
Yeah, I had to sign my life away to promise that I would never release any of the information I received, but I'm sure we can find a way.
All right. Well, I think Angus Orford will allow you to share some of that information. I think he's the president this week at MCL. That's good news. Good news.
Moving forward, so maybe in the minutes we could just have it so that we will further discuss our budget, and within that talk about Councillor Bernard and Councillor Berg's ideas, and see if there's any room that we could perhaps entertain some of that. What's everyone's
there are
thoughts?
definitely municipalities that have, tree days where they give away trees for private residents to take home. There's definitely a way to do it if that was a program that council was interested in supporting. But basically what I was saying is right now we don't have that program.
Yeah,
Okay.
giving trees away. I think that if we're going to give them away, I think that the residents should pay for one tree, and we'll match one. So you're getting twice
Two for the
the
band.
crowd.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
I'm still waiting. Chair, I just have a question still on the heritage trees.
Okay, sure.
Jessica,
Yes.
I'm just wondering, and it goes back again to what Greg was saying, but so the heritage trees, when I reached 11, well, first of all, what defines a heritage tree or a cultural tree of the city of Charlotte?
So we have what is called heritage trees. And so they have to be both two things, of a certain size and of a certain species. So they have to be greater than 100 centimeters in diameter. So that's a very large tree. So that's, a meter in width at the trunk. And it has to be one of 5 species. So elm, red maple, sugar maple, red oak, and linden.
So if I have a red maple or a red oak in my yard, and I've got a circumference of at least 100 meters, or
Centimeters, yeah.
All right. And I want to take it down. According to this, I need written permission from the city, even though it's in my.
That's correct.
But yeah, the wind blows one down or whatever, we don't give any assistance because it's on private property.
Correct.
I don't like that. It's either one that you can count both ways.
Yeah. Well, it's an act of God, right? We can't predict when that tree's going to come down.
That's not what I'm saying, though, Terry. I understand that. But I'm saying if it's my yard, it's my tree. I do what I want. The city's telling me on one hand you can't touch it, but if something does happen, they're not prepared to pay for it.
Yeah.
So to me,
Yeah, so
I'm taking that out.
it's very common to have tree protection because the urban forest in Charlottetown is not just made up, obviously, as you know, of city-owned trees. So this is a tool for us to protect our very important mature tree canopy. And if we have no restrictions on the ability for people to cut down our oldest and most valuable trees, I don't think that's a good thing. And in some municipalities, they have 2 tree bylaws, one for private lands and one for public lands. So this is a public tree bylaw, but it kind of touches on private property. So it's telling private residents that we as the city want to make sure we're protecting large heritage trees. And we want to know when they want to cut them down and work on them and try and protect them as much as possible.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we pay for the maintenance or we pay for the removal or anything like that.
No, and you know, I don't think there'd be a lot of this, but I do think there's going to be times where, because we're passing bylaws where you're allowed to have weeds in the backyard, the small homes or what have you, and so if we have one of these trees that needs to be moved or limbed or whatever, even though it's on private property, I need to get the blessing from the city. If the city says no, then all my lands are forfeited. And I just it's a little too strict for private property. That's all.
Can I just mention one item? Like, I think of I'm a heritage homeowner, and I live in a designated heritage home, and it's kind of one thing that I really like is that we do have that support program for the things that need to be done on the house. There is some funding available for that, but keeping up a heritage home is a lot more expensive than keeping up a regular home because there's a lot of restrictions. But we consider that a community asset, and I think that's what we're looking at. We didn't want to get into regulating all trees on city property, but if we're talking about those really big heritage assets in our city, we want to have some way to determine what happens to them, just like we want to have that way of determining what happens to those buildings and those homes.
Would it be possible, Jessica, you just mentioned that it's kind of the private homeowner versus the city property owner, to have 2 bylaws, one a little bit more clear for homeowners to be able to look at? Does that make sense in this case?
I could see down the road us having both a public tree bylaw and a private tree bylaw, but I mean, with that comes a lot more restrictions to private homeowners because, a lot of municipalities, they request that people get permits for tree removals on private property over a certain number. So say if you're cutting down more than 2 trees on your property, you need to come to the city, apply for a permit to get exemption. And so there's that whole side of private tree bylaw, right, where we would have stricter enforcements. Like this is actually a fairly, low level private tree protection. Like this is the very basic level of private tree protection.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
But so, Councillor McLeod, can I just ask one more question?
A question, I believe.
Just a really quick question. So when it comes to enforcement, I just heard that mentioned. If someone were to not get permission from the city and they said basically, I'm not listening, I'm going to hire a company to come and take it down. First of all, do companies know what our rules are? Do they require the homeowner have a permit? And B, if they chop it down on their own accord, pardon the pun, I guess, accord. Do they? Is there, what are the penalties? What are the penalties?
So we did. So kind of 2 parts to that. So we did do outreach to private tree companies and utility companies, and made a list of everyone we thought might come in contact with trees. And then we recently did a bunch more PR around the bylaw. So we're hoping word's getting out there about the bylaw. So the ownership will be on these companies and utility companies and contractors to know about the bylaw and to follow the bylaw. Should somebody ignore the bylaw or not know about the bylaw, there are fines in place. They're on the bottom of that. I can look them up if you want.
No, it's okay. Are they enforceable though? Is my question. I mean, we haven't.
Yeah, we've already given at least one to my knowledge.
Okay.
We've done one fine of somebody. I think it was a development that was happening, and they didn't contact us before removing trees, and so they did get a fine.
Jessica,
Yeah.
what sections for penalties?
So,
I'm looking at the bylaw right now. Where's your penalties?
So 19.2 speaks to it a bit about, so that is if we give permission for a tree removal, it talks about what the fees are. So when we work with Maritime Electric as an example and they need to remove a tree, it's based on the size. So if it's under 65 centimeters, it's $1,000 fee. And then 65 to 100 is $2,000. So that's the fees. And then let me look at
Section 22. Section 22, Your Worship.
You have a separate section for penalties.
Section 22.
Yeah.
Section 22.
So that we made that distinction with Maritime Electric because they were saying we were fining them for cutting down our trees. And I said, no, it's not. We're giving you, it's a fee because we want to replace our assets that you're removing. So yeah, and so then the fine is, yes, 22.
Yeah. So, Mr. Kelly, Jessica, I know that in other bylaws we have a minimum and a maximum. So 3,000 for the first offense. That's your max. There's no minimum, like up to 500, up to 3,000. Bylaws tend to have a minimum and a maximum for penalties.
Well, it does say there, Your Worship, 3,000 for the first offense, 4,000 for the second.
Yeah. So, but what they do in other parts of in penalty sections of bylaws or laws, there's a maximum and minimum. It's like a minimum sentence of 14 years for a break and enter, maximum sentence of 14 years for break and enter, and minimum would be probation, to use a criminal offense. But right. In this situation, it just says 3,000. So should we not look at minimum, maximum, or are we getting into too many details?
That one
a question, how many heritage trees would there be on private property, roughly?
I'd have to look that up for you. I don't know off the top of my head, unfortunately.
A question could we somehow make sure we identify all those trees with the homeowners? At least that might, give people the idea that, whoa, I just can't cut that tree down because it is a heritage tree. It's not to say they can't, but we would like to be consulted, and I'm sure through communication, which is a wonderful thing, we could work it out so that, because maybe the trees got maybe there's, there's a infestation of something or other in the tree as well, right? So it might be a good idea that we communicate with all the homeowners that they do have a heritage tree. That might solve a lot of the problems before it ever gets to a fine scenario.
And here is what the only concern I have is that, so you have a big heritage tree in your backyard. And, right. I mean, we're all here that they have lots of red oak. So you have a big tree, and then it starts to really get pretty big, get close to falling the house, what have you. So often the city say, I'm getting pretty nervous that tree, if we get into a storm, it's going to fall on the house. And the city says, nah, you know what, it's a pretty nice heritage tree. That ain't coming down. So then when the storm comes along and pulls it down, there's no assistance. So in one sense, we're saying, heritage tree, too bad, can't touch it. The second sense, when the storm does pull it out of the ground, there's no financial assistance from the city. Well, that's your problem, not ours. It's an act of God. But the person.
So the only thing I'll speak to that, so we're not saying that you can't do work to a heritage tree. We're not saying you can't cut down a heritage tree or prune it, because there are definitely going to be situations where you need to do that and have to do that. Yeah. And we're not here to be, difficult. And so if a person has an unhealthy tree, a weak tree, limbs that are in the way, we're not going in blanketly and saying you can't touch a heritage tree. It's just saying we want to have that opportunity to communicate with you and make recommendations. So we'll probably advise that they work with a certified tree company, a certified arborist, rather than getting Joe down the street to cut it. And we'll just work with them through the process to make sure they're doing it the best way possible. So it's not meant to be like, you have a heritage tree, don't touch it.
No.
And I think that goes back to what I was saying about communication. There seems to be that some private owners of trees don't understand that it is a heritage tree and what the purpose of it's about inventory. It's about just knowing, in case of something does affect our trees, it's important that we know what heritage trees are, where they are, and what they are. And that's more what it's about, I think, than being so strict with whether or not they can cut it down. We don't want anybody to cut down a heritage tree, but in cases like Mr. Bernard just said, there's probably a case where that tree's got to come down. So I think communication and signifying what trees are would be a big step toward solving this discussion.
Yeah. And Councillor McLeod, I mentioned this when Beth was with us last fall or last spring about the corner of Vista Street and Northwell Road, where the homeowner cut down a grove of birch trees.
Right.
And we didn't have a bylaw in place, so it doesn't just. I'm not just looking at heritage trees; it's like trees in general are very important for the environment, and that's why I think we can distinguish between heritage and non-heritage trees. But it's about this bylaw is about protection of trees in Charlottetown. And Jessica, thank you for that point about a dialogue with MECL, Maritime Electric.
Yeah,
that's the same dialogue that we can open up with homeowners, Durans, all these landscape companies. That look, trees are very important for the environment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, if there's no more questions for Jessica, I think Jessica's got a pretty good idea where we're heading as a committee, and we'll look forward to some future reports.
Yeah, no, that's good conversation. Thanks for your input.
Very good.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Moving on to Bike Week 2020, and I believe that's Katrina, I believe, is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, so just a little bit of information about Bike Week for you. Of course, so it's scheduled to be June 15th to 21st, so coming up quick enough that we definitely need to be considering all of the restrictions around COVID-19 when it comes to it. But unlike some of the things that we'll just be canceling or postponing, we do feel like it's important to move forward with Bike Week in some capacity. It's just a time, I feel, where people really need ways to get outside, get exercise, get fresh air. And biking is a really great way to do that in a sustainable way, and that makes it pretty easy to social distance. And there's been some information coming out as well recently that bike shops are really busy right now, much busier than usual, which is showing people's desire to get on their bicycles. And I think that the city has a role to play in supporting that and helping to solidify those habits. So that said, what we're proposing is moving Bike Week 2020 to a strictly online format instead of offering events, because chances are by the end of June, we still may not be able to offer those events. So to sort of ensure that the work we're doing is actually something we're able to execute. The things that we are planning are a 5-part bike maintenance video series. So it will be prepared by Jeff, who is the PEI bike guy. And yeah, they'd be about 5 to 7 minutes in length. They would be targeted towards youth, but they would be applicable to adults as well. And they would cover topics like fixing a flat tire, adjusting gears or brakes, cycling safety, those kinds of things. And the intent would be to release them every day of Bike Week, but something that's really great about a project like this is that it would be a resource for us to have in years to come as well. We could re-release them, throughout the cycling season, as well as in any Bike Week in the future. So that would be one component. And then as a second part, we would do a social media campaign as well that would allow us to promote some of the existing city resources like the bike map and a cycling handbook that will be released shortly. And it would also give us an opportunity just to put that cycling positive messaging out there and encourage people to get on their bikes. with that, we would probably do some sort of online contest or event, encouraging people to cycle and to probably post pictures, that kind of thing. And there would be some prizes from local businesses and some cycling safety gear. So along with that, we are proposing a budget of $2,000, which is a substantial reduction from the $7,500 that was allocated last year. And that just reflects the fact that it will be in that online format and sort of considering the prudent spending necessitated by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you very much. Just before we have questions, I think Councillor Rivera has to go to another conference call. So thank you very much, Greg. And I think he probably has gone, has he? Okay. Anyway, sorry for the interruption. Any questions on that, guys? I lost you, Philip. Right.
Unmute, Philip.
You might be on mute, Philip. Can't hear you.
That's a first time.
Yeah, really. That was enjoyable.
I think Mr. Kelly remotely pressed my mute button.
Never, never.
Or is it Sandy McMillan? Someone's out there doing it. Last year we had a bike around the city, and we can probably do it this year by keeping that 6 feet 2 meters. But it would be mayor, council doing something like Ramona. Remember we did that last year? Left City Hall and did the bike lane around Victoria Park, down some streets. I took the Confederation Trail. So are we looking at doing something like that this year, Katrina?
We haven't looked at it specifically, but but my thoughts behind it were sort of to try and bring any of you that were interested on whatever kind of online event that we do. So if it's some sort of competition or like a socially distanced group ride is what I've seen some people doing, would of course be to bring you guys in, and whether it would be you doing it on your own and then posting about it to encourage other people to do it as well, or whatever format that may take.
Perhaps that sounds like a good idea. Like, if we designated a certain day or hour or whatever time frame we want, and then ask people to share their experience online, I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
There's some great places to bike around this city, like the trail, the Confederation Trail, excellent. Yeah. Of course, the lane around Victoria Park. Yeah. But Councillor McLeod, lots of great neighborhoods, like Frank Macaulay Park. I was up through that park, the lane, the bike path going through there. So it's excellent that we show people that, you know what, you can do a lot of great things around your own home or in your own neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Good.
And all levels of bikers, because someone like me, I could demonstrate the very beginning level.
So you're still on the trainer wheels?
Correct.
Start in the parking lot. Anyway, it's great. It's great that we, as I heard Councilor McCabe saying earlier here about walking and getting out. That's one thing this is doing, is it is creating exercise, and it's great to see. And hopefully it'll create a trend for people to continue using it. But I think the bike having people share their experiences will, like you say, it'll help promote the city as well. Like the mayor said, there's all different venues throughout the city that's people just don't think about, right? But this might be an opportunity for it to kill a couple of birds with one stone. So. Yeah. Any other questions on Bike Week?
Sounds great.
I see not. You're doing a great job. Keep it up, and you'll keep us posted, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think we have an update on our Michael Grant program and spring events with Ramona, I believe.
Yeah. So just briefly, just another verbal update here. We have, we sent around that email sort of earlier when we didn't have a meeting in March. We sent around some information just that we've postponed the micro-grant program, which would normally be announced this time of year. We usually go live 1st of April with that, right after the budget passes. So we've postponed that sort of indefinitely. I just wanted to outline like some of the events that are canceled this year. There was an Earth Day. We would normally be doing water school in the schools. We would normally be doing Arbor Day. We had a great trail cleanup last year that we're not able to do, the business tree planting challenge, all of our in-person biking events, our gardening in small spaces events, our Wild Things in the City event, which is Frank Macaulay event, Herb Days is still a maybe that we partner with community groups to deliver, and then as well as the Food Council, the asset mapping workshop. So just kind of want to highlight that we've had sort of a major change. Spring tends to be a lot about events for us and about tree planting and getting out in the community. So that's definitely a challenge. We're also looking at how we're going to handle staffing over the summer. Normally we would have a number of student positions with our department, and those are all sort of up in the air at this point. So I guess my point in saying that is appreciate the support for doing some of the Bike Week events online. We are going to see significant reduction in our costs as a department because we aren't delivering so many of our events that we would normally deliver this time of year. So we would love to be doing, to be honest, we would love to be doing more online content and more things that we can be doing remotely, but I am really aware of our financial scenario also, so trying to balance that out. But if there is any direction from the committee in terms of sort of that big picture side of things, we're definitely open to hearing it, because it is a loss to be giving up all those great events that we normally would do this time of year.
Yeah. So there is some of those events, though, that if things did get released to some degree, like the garbage pickup, for example, keeping distance, physical distance there shouldn't be too hard on events like that. Once we of course would have to wait for the numbers to go up that we can get together. But there is a few of those events we could probably still maybe manage, but again, staffing would be the big one too, of course.
Yep. And, in speaking with communications too, and being aware of this, we want to be really careful about what we promote. Like, if we're promoting people out cleaning up even on their own, but that presents a health hazard in that they could be touching something that's been contaminated or whatnot. So we're being, like everybody else, we're being very careful about what we encourage people to do, but we will keep an eye out as restrictions sort of ease and see what we can do with the situation we have.
Just want to say thanks, Ramona. It's been a mind-boggling last 35, 40 days, and we appreciate all what you're doing there. It's tough working at home, and you're taking school in yourself, so really appreciate all your efforts.
Oh yeah, thank you, Terry, and thanks to the city organization for. I will say that there was a couple things that the city organization did this winter that really made a big difference, like moving to Office 365, getting teams in place. Moving to our online billing system through Fraction. There was a couple steps that we really made that we didn't know would be proactive, but have been really proactive. And I think, speaking to some of my colleagues with the province, they don't have access to the software that we have access to. It's a really different scenario. So honestly, that'd be one of the things that I would hope to help support when I get back into the offices. How can we make it even better for ourselves if we need to do this again?
The provinces still use Oracle for their data system. We just get out of it. Yeah. And Councillor McLeod, yes. So under our next meeting, just to review some of our budget issues. Right, we do. That'd be a good idea. And Katrina, just one last item on the bike shops or the bike setups that you have down there, Joe Giz Park.
Okay.
You have a pump and some tools. I was down using it 2 weeks ago. The air pump doesn't work.
Okay.
And do you have any other of those setups around the city?
Yes, I believe there are a few. I'm not 100% sure where they are, but I think, is there 3 of them, Ramona?
Could we locate them and just...
There's another one up at UPEI. It's not ours, but I'll tell you, Your Worship, we are going to relocate that Fix-It station from Joe Giz Park up to closer to the farmers market. And I'll tell you the reason why. Along the trail, we've had a lot of issues there with vandalism. So we've been replacing that pump head a couple times a year, and things have been getting pulled off it. So we're hoping that moving it to this other location will help. So Nancy, in Park Superintendent, has been working with the farmers market there, and we're going to relocate it.
Yeah, that fix-up station, Joe Giz, they're missing some tools too.
Yeah, it's pulled apart. So we'll make sure when we do the move that we get it back on track.
And I don't think it's the squirrels that are chewing through the wire.
No, don't think so. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, we have no camera down there. We're just like, it's just replacing it every couple months in the summertime. People just pulling it apart.
Okay, if there's no more questions on Michael Grant's, we shall move on to new business. Anybody got anything new to throw in? I see none. I guess the next thing is adjournment. Needs moved by Councilor McCabe, seconded by Your Worship.
Sure.
Mayor Brown.
Sure.
And we're adjourned.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you very
everybody.
much. Thank you, everybody.